How does Taylor Swift keep getting into relationships? I actually meant to bring this up on my last live that I just finished up, and then I realized, oh, I didn't mention it. But so if you're listening to this on Friday, the 19th of April, Taylor Swift just dropped her new album, The Tortured Poets Department. So I had to go to the doctors this morning. And so on the way to and from the doctors, I listened to the album. I'll give you this. I actually enjoy this album a lot better than her previous album, Midnight. So this isn't speaking on the quality of her album at all, because I think overall it's a pretty decent listen. Although I just got a text from my brother because I text him. My niece is very much a big fan of Taylor Swift. And so I text him this morning saying, hey, new Taylor Swift out today. It's over 2 hours long. Let me know when my niece has heard it. So he wrote me right before this live. He said, the album is boring. Not impressed. Give me the Travis Kelce influenced party album, not the My Boyfriend Broke Up and Cat album. My brother's hilarious. So I told him I actually liked it. But I will say, within the narrative of the album, I did notice that the majority of the album is her talking about breakups, about how these men in her past, whether it's her former guy, Joe, whose last name I can't pronounce, like I think it's like Owie or something like that. But then this guy, Matt Healy, and then going so far back to even John Mayer. She mentions, not by name, but from scenarios, she mentions a whole lot about how she's been broken up with, cheated on, how the guy wasn't there for her, blah, 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 blah. So she talks all this stuff through the album, right? Which leads me to ask the question, is Taylor Swift actually the toxic one? Like, for one, I don't mean in a sense of like, I don't know how to, so I'll just start off like this, right? So for one, the fact that every time she goes through a breakup of some kind, the next album, the very next album that we get is her talking crap about her former ex, right? Now, this would lead one to believe that if we're listening to Taylor's version of this stuff, that all the guys that she ever dates in life somehow become these toxic guys, and she's just an innocent bystander. She didn't know they were going to be toxic, but all of a sudden, as it gets towards the breakup, they become toxic. And now she's got to go out there and tell her sob story about how she was the one that was just trying to be there for them. She thought that she was going to be in a love path, but then they came and stomped the path out the last minute. And I just wholeheartedly don't believe that. Like, I believe in any relationship, there are two people that are making decisions about how they're going to be with the other person, how they're going to either treat the other person, or how they're going to accept treatment from said person, right? So it's not even to say that some of the exes she dated could have potentially been toxic people. But all of them, like, she doesn't have any reflection about, oh, there were times that I was doing stuff too. And I bring this up because as a guy, it's important to know that when women come to you and tell you stories about their exes and previous times they were dating somebody, most of the stories you're going to get are going to be about how they were abused, they were taken advantage of, the guy wasn't there enough for them, I got hurt. And that's the thing, is that in society, when women get hurt, the automatic assumption is she's justified in her hurt, and whatever she says must be gospel. And also, it's always the guy's fault. Like, we don't know for these breakups, we don't know why Joe and Taylor broke up. All we know is it didn't work out. Now, could he have done some toxic things? Maybe that happened, but again, we don't know his side of the story. He's been relatively silent. I find it's interesting that when breakups happen, women will go out there and tell everybody all the news. Oh, this breakup happened because this guy did. And you ask guys, most guys will just be like, I mean, it didn't work out. I wish her the best. At most, they'll say, she was a little crazy. That's about it. But most women will go out there and whatever. So I say this to say, with Taylor's narrative, she's going out here saying all this stuff. But I stress this because, you know, I've had this situation before where I remember there one time I was dating this girl. We went on the first date. At first date, she was telling me all about how, oh, her exes were toxic and they were abusive and blah, 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 blah. And, you know, me being a guy that wants to be in his hero phase, I was like, oh, I'm not going to be that way. I would never. How'd that possibly happen? So fast forward to our third date. We're in the park somewhere. We're walking around. And again, she starts mentioning about previous exes, like this one over here who abused her, this one that, you know, cheated out of her money. And then she says, oh, then there was this other guy I dated and he was abusive to me, but also I was kind of abusive to him. Like, I would sometimes punch him or hit him. I'm amazed that she's actually bringing this story up, because women rarely ever admit that they were doing something wrong in a relationship. But also I'm like, but wait, but in that case, you were being toxic and stuff. And so I start to think, could it possibly be that she's using that narrative to put herself as the victim to gain sympathy, or because she's not quite getting that she actually did stuff in the relationship that was toxic and doesn't want to admit that. Because as I said before, people, it is hard to admit when we're the ones being toxic in relationships. I've been a guy that has been toxic at times. I've dated women who've done toxic stuff at times, but it's hard to put that on yourself because you want to see yourself as a good person, right? So then fast forward to this woman that I was dating. She was constantly trying to text me, like, once we text for like 20, 30 minutes, I'd be ready to move on to something else, and she's still trying to text me. So she'd text me something back. I'd be like, I'll hit you up later. 5 minutes later, she would text me again. Hey, Harry, you still there? What's going on? Why aren't you? What's going on? And so from that jump, I could see, oh, she has an anxious attachment style, and she's very codependent, and she's already picturing the worst case scenario should I not be in front of her face. And eventually, I had to break up with her because, true story, I had to go to court because there was a meth head that had broken into my very cheap apartment in downtown LA, and I had to go testify against this guy because he stole my stuff. They found him, they tased him. It was a whole thing, right? So I had told her the day before, I got to go to court the next day. Well, in court, they don't allow you to have your phone on. So for the first like 5 hours of this course, I didn't have my phone on, and this chick thought that I was probably out cheating or doing whatever, because lunchtime came. I go check my phone, and I'm looking at like all these messages I have, and then I have all these voice messages that are missing, like 6 voice messages, right? And I'm listening back to back. Harry, are you there? Harry, what's going on? Why aren't you answering the phone? Are you cheating on me? Blah, 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 blah. What's going on? Why are you're treating me like every other guy? This is that. So I finally texted back like, look, I told you I was going to be in court today. My phone wasn't on. This isn't going to work out. Now, I say that story because that is now my version of the story. What version of the story do you imagine she told to her friends and family? Oh, well, this guy, he was just kind of shady, and he wouldn't always answer his texts, and he wasn't listening to me like this and that. Like, that's going to now be her victim story going forward to anybody else that she dates who she wants to get in the good graces, and not show that in the case of me and her dating, she was actually being the toxic one. And so when I see Taylor come out album after album saying that, well, my ex is the one that did this and he treated this and that, I got to stop and think, all of them, like, just all these guys just became toxic. You know, it's totally fine if, like, you know, a relationship peters out, or as it gets close to an end point, just, you know, both people aren't talking to each other as much, or they're fighting a lot more, whatever. And it just is like ultimately leading to, this isn't going to work out. We got to break up. Like, breakups tend to happen, and breakups do not feel great, but that does not mean every breakup is toxic. To hear Taylor tell it, every breakup she's ever had in her entire life is toxic. And that is not a good place to be, because is she doing any self-reflection? Is she looking at, are there moments in this relationship where I could have potentially been the toxic one, but I'm not going to tell anybody that because God knows I don't want to be the bad guy. Like, imagine if Taylor came out in public and was like, oh, so we broke up because I did some stuff. Do you think her fans would buy that? No, they want to buy into the narrative of the poor, innocent little white girl who was trying to find love, and, oh, another guy just stepped on her toes. How could this dare happen? And that's a narrative that sells for her, so she's going to keep selling that. But keep in mind, some of the people that she talked about on this album, fast forward or rewind back 3 or 4 years ago, she was making love anthems. Like, the whole Lover album was about her ex Joe, who now she's making songs about how he was actually, you know, not a great guy, and he was at times ignoring her and blah, blah, blah. Like, so which is it? So because Lover happened, and I know that you thought great thoughts about him then, you're going to try to reconstruct history by saying, oh, actually, he was being toxic back then. Like, I don't buy that. But that's the point, is that, again, this stuff sells. So you're going to listen to this and think, oh, poor innocent Taylor, poor victim. And the reality is, she had a say in some of those decisions. I imagine Taylor's actually a really well-to-do person, but I also imagine that she may have some blind spots that she's not going to call herself out on, her camp's not going to, and her exes are just kind of being like, hey, you do you. So all we get is her side of the story, where every guy she dated was toxic. That's not good. Now, here's the other red flag, though, for you guys to read into, right? Is that, again, when she breaks up with a guy, she writes these anthems about how the guy treated her wrong and were totally bad, right? And yet somehow another guy will come along and be like, oh, I feel sorry for you, Taylor, but that's not going to be me. I'm going to date you. Think about, like, Tom Hiddleston, the guy that plays Loki in the Marvel movies, right? Like, I imagine when he was dating her, he wasn't thinking, if this doesn't work out, she's going to write a song about me. But neither did Joe, neither did John, neither did Matt Healy. Like none of these guys figured, or they probably thought like, oh, those other songs about those other guys, I totally get why she did that. But that's not going to be my story because we're going to make it work great. And then the breakup happens and the very next album comes out and it's all about the previous person or previous persons, right? So now we have Travis Kelce. Now, Travis Kelce and her have been going strong since August, right? And so there are a couple of songs on this album that touch upon that. Oh, I've never felt love like this. This guy's so great. Wasn't she saying that on previous albums about other dudes that she's now talking trash about? So how Travis doesn't think, hey, if this doesn't work out, I'm getting a whole album dedicated to me about this breakup. Do I want that? And that's the thing, guys. For you as a guy, what's important to know is that women's history is going to repeat itself. And the way that she treated previous exes, the way that she talked about them in breakups, the way that she was when things weren't going her way is going to be the exact same way that she's going to act when it happens to you. If you guys get into an argument and you guys start riffing or fighting, any version of previous fights she told you about and how she handled them with previous people is how it's going to happen with you. And I've been blinded by that. I've been blinded by dating women who are like, oh yeah, well, in my past, there was this one time where like I kissed another guy, but it didn't mean anything. Fast forward to, I've hooked up with that same girl and it's like, oh, she went and kissed somebody else. Or she'll say like, oh, I used to stonewall in my relationships and not talk to guys when I was fighting with them, but I've been through therapy and I've gotten better now. Fast forward to our first fight, they're stonewalling, they're crying, all the things. It's going to repeat itself. And so whatever she was doing to those previous people, she's going to also do to you. And Taylor does this time and time again. And guys keep on signing up to date her. And as a person that likes music, I am fine with that because I want the entertainment. But I feel bad for the guys in the scenario that aren't seeing what's coming. Like Travis, I hope to God it works out with Travis because what's not being seen is what's going to happen to Travis if this doesn't work out. Like, this is 31 songs. To be fair, not all 31 songs are about breakups. I'd say about 75% of the album is geared towards talking about breakups and about previous relationships in some capacity. There are other ones that are more creative. She has a couple of great songs going at Kim Kardashian on this thing, so definitely check that out if nothing else. The song Karma. Oh, sorry. Let's see. I have the original version pulled up. I need the deluxe version. But there's a song called Cassandra on there that is all about Kim Kardashian, as well as a song called Thank You, Amy. So check those out because they deserve it. Like the way Kim and Kanye were going at Taylor Swift and him having the video of her like fake naked in bed, like that was not cool at all, But suffice to say, yeah, guys, like just be mindful going forward. When you are trying to date women and they're telling you things about their previous dating history, please, please, please just assume it's going to eventually be you. But in the meantime, check out Taylor's album because it's pretty sweet. Anyway, I just wanted I meant to say that in my last live and I totally didn't get to it. So hopefully I've been able to properly address how I feel about the Taylor situation. So yeah, hopefully guys, it helps you out. That's all I got for now. I have a guy in the chat that's asking a question. Says, thanks for answering my question in the previous show. Unfortunately, she doesn't have any other social media, but I should probably move on anyway. Maybe counseling would help. Yeah, guy, like if she wasn't talking to you this long and she's not reaching out to you, I'd say since you have previous messages there that indicate simpness, that don't go that route. It's just better to move on altogether. Is my 2 cents. But again, you're going to run against more than a bevy of women to where 2 or 3 years from now, this woman will be a distant memory and you will find somebody better. All right. Anyway, guys, I just had to come back on for this short little version of a live. So feel free to check out my website, introvertdatingsuccess.com. We have coaching there. We have ebooks, audiobooks, all the things designed to help you date as your introverted self while still getting your precious alone time. For now, I got to go get lunch because I am hungry as heck. So I will talk to y'all later. Peace.
You's a bad boy, but you can't stop, won't stop. You a high earning, high value, high class man. You a high earning, high value, high class man. You a high earning, high value, high class man. You a high class man. You a high class man. You a high earning, high value, high class.